This is the Conscious Hours, January 7th, and the war rages on, but you don't see that on the mainstream media. Bibi is continuing the war because he does not want to go to jail for the rest of his life. So he continues. Listen closely, because the only reason the war is continuing is because of Netanyahu. They are not winning the war. They cannot win the war, and most experts have agreed. But the war machine continues its mission. The mission is Greater Israel, and it's backed by, the list is the United States, Germany, Great Britain, France, and we, the American taxpayer, are spending billions on a suicidal mission that will result in more bloodshed, more Israelis dying, and if it goes the way it's projected, the total elimination of Israel. Listen closely, and then when you realize that this war needs to end, and Israel needs to be held accountable for its crimes, all of its crimes.
We returned to Jabalia for the 5th time, and a similar number in other areas. One of those other areas was Khan Yunis, but other parts too. We are losing many soldiers and seriously wounded, having people who are seriously wounded. And since the 5th entrance of the Jabalia, we lost nearly 40 fighters. Now that's only according to what Israel is admitting in Jabalia. The biggest losses that Israel has admitted ever since all of their invasions in Jabalia. He also added that the IDF cannot defeat Hamas. The IDF simply cannot defeat Hamas because there is no surplus of forces. IDF soldiers do not remain in the territories they occupied for long, and that's why they are unable to eradicate Hamas's rule and seriously destroy their strongholds. And indeed, that's what Israel does. They go in and go out and go in and go out and go in and go out to a level where many soldiers start to complain about this. It's so demotivating, it's so demoralized, so depressing, going to an area where you lost people, you had lots of ambushes against the resistance, only to come back with these people who you were fighting for so long and sacrificed so much against to try and do something, only to see them getting stronger and stronger and bringing more people and new equipment and launching missiles and targeting more tanks and more troop carriers inside of Gaza. He also added, we are not able to collapse Hamas, but in the name of this cliche, Bibi gives up on rescuing the hostages who are dying in the Hamas tunnels. All of this serves his supreme interest in continuing the war in order to remain in power. And he's calling that a serious violation of all basic values of which generations of fighters and civilians have grown up on. The abandonment is the betrayal of the state by its citizens, according to him. The consequences of these depraved actions by Bibi and his cronies will bring disastrous results. Citizens and soldiers whom the state betrayed in their most difficult time will express an unwillingness to contribute to the state, and certainly an unwillingness to enlist in the army, which is what has been happening. And not only has been happening, has been increasing in level when it comes to refusal, rejection, refusing to serve, criticizing the government, all of the distrust in the politicians and in the army itself.
So here you have it. It's Bibi's war. It's Congress's war. And we have to deal with egos. Yes, those big egos. Because they're warriors. They have to win the game. They have to win the battle. They're battle hardened. It's such an old mentality. It's a male-dominated mentality. But Bibi, I call him Bibi, said Netanyahu. That's a funny name, Netanyahu. That's not even his name, but it's Netanyahu. Let's stand behind him. Let's get all excited. He's our leader. He's our fearless leader, leading us to victory. He and the West are destroying Israel. And maybe it's time. If you look at what the Zionists have done around the world, maybe it's time. Karma sometimes is a bitch. But to the congressional members of Congress, 93% of you have your mouth shut. 93% of you are afraid to speak out. Why? Because Israel's got the goods on you? Oh, what's that about? Well, you know that human trafficking thing? Do you remember the Jews that were busted in New York in their little conclave underneath the street there? And they had, I remember seeing it on the news. You know, you got these, in New York, you'll have a subterranean apartment below. Well, they went in there and they found beds and they were having sex with children and, you know, the child trafficking ring. I ignored that. I tried to ignore that because for me it is truly disgusting. But it's real, folks. And it's not just the Zionists, but it's this male world gone mad, ruling everything out of winning the game, which was created by Monopoly, that gets our mentality and psychological programming to win at all costs. So how far do we go down this rabbit hole? Perhaps the only way out is the total destruction of Israel. And you can trust me on this. When the resistance decides to create the orchestra, there will be no Israel. We've all seen these hypersonic missiles. You've seen hypersonics that are, we'll call them the B class, but you haven't seen the A class ones. The ones that are much more powerful. And what's being revealed is they're really perplexed that they keep coming back and they're getting stronger. Sure, they're getting stronger. Why? Because they have the moral obligation to eradicate this dis-ease called Zionism extremism. Remember, these people are so religious that they will fight to make sure this never happens again. And here's the twist. If we had a ceasefire and we just prolong it, we will continue later and the war could go on like Ukraine, more and more. And are we in America, who really aren't watching the news or seeing the news, willing to put up with putting our kids in harm's way? And just from a moral, plain humanistic, are we really willing to sacrifice all of those Palestinian people that are not the terrorists? They're the resistance, and the ones that are getting killed aren't even the resistance. They're just living there, trying to live. And now it's pouring down rain and snow. People are being flooded out of their tents. They have no food. They're starving to death and they're freezing to death. And then Bibi comes back with his troops into Gaza or Jabalia, does another cleaning, trying to fighting the resistance. We're going to save the hostages. And now he's given up on the hostages, but he has to win the war. Don't you see? So Congress, shut it off. Incarcerate all of these war criminals inside the United States and outside the United States. If you want to build a real America that represents the values and principles of the American people, the 350 million of us who have no stomach for war, and we sure in the hell don't want our tax dollars paying these huge corporations to design even better weapons and future weapons so we can always have perpetual war. This is what they're gearing up to. Everybody's gearing up to cyber warfare now. You got the drones flying in the sky. You got alien spaceships coming. You got robotic soldiers coming. They want to continue this for the existence of planet Earth. But it's such an insanity game. What if this happens? What if the resistance decides to launch all at once? All the countries that surround that evil empire launch their hypersonic missiles. Not nuclear, hypersonic missiles. Fly at Mach 10 and have the percussion that's like an atomic bomb that hits the ground. You've seen Netanyahu use a few of those. It's the end. It's the end of Israel and anybody that's in his way. Maybe that's the only solution, but it won't stop the war machine because they'll be beat. And they'll come back and say, we're going to build stronger and stronger and stronger. Oh, sit down, shut up, get fucked, do something. But stop fucking up the world for everybody else. Isn't it the time? Or do we have to wait for all these old goddamn politicians to die off and stop funding this insanity? So the clock's ticking, Congress. Are you going to pull your head out of your proverbial ass and do what's right for humanity? Or are you just doing it for your pocketbook? This is the Conscious Hour. It's time everybody pick up the phone and tell their congressional representatives, hell no, no more money, zero. Spend it at home. Donald Trump, build a great America and screw this greater Israel project that you're in bed with. And remember, Ms. Adelson gave you $2 million, so you're just another puppet for them too. We're in dangerous waters, folks. Very dangerous waters. This is January 7th. Of 2025. It's time to end this, don't you think?